Welcome to the Pharos Fit podcast, where we help you to explore your capacity to move better, push further, and achieve your limitless potential through fitness, nutrition, recovery, and lifestyle. Hey guys, welcome back to the Pharos Fit podcast. Good to be back with you guys. This podcast is going to be a little bit different today. It's going to be a little bit of a kind of an exploration. I'm not really sure where it's going to go, so I'm kind of just going to start it. I got this title in my head, kind of origins, dreams, and how the fuck I got here. I think it's interesting sometimes when we get to points in our lives to think about how the hell this all happened and how I got here and where I'm going from this point. Obviously, I've had a lot of people on the podcast where I've kind of asked this stuff too. And it's been a while since I kind of asked myself the same questions. And at a point now, we are at a point as a company, and me and Emily are at a point with our family where we're about to start something new again. It's not a departure, it's an extension. And then it's an exciting time, and it kind of feels like a lot of things coming together that are making this possible, as if all roads have kind of led to this point. Just experiences that I've had, adventures that I've had, places I've been, and things I've seen have now led me to this point where I want to do this next thing. Brandon is going to be with me through this podcast. He's going to maybe throw in a few questions as I go if they come up. People often ask me, how did you become a trainer? How did you get into the film stuff? How did Pharos happen? All that kind of stuff. So I'm going to get into that. I do want to go right back to the beginning and sort of where I came from and what eventually led me to come to America and what led to eventually Pharos and where we're going from here. So to take it right back, I was born on a place called the Isle of Wight. When I'm here and people ask me where I'm from, I kind of have to preface it with, I'm from an island. It's just off the south coast of England. It's a small place. It's a seaside town. It's very much, most of the economy is tourism. Has a relatively elderly population. It's a great place to kind of retire to. There are a lot of, oldie-woldy English kind of villages and towns.
So it's like off the coast of Brighton or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's off the coast of Portsmouth, actually. Like, if you know the UK, and if you think of the UK as a triangle, and you go to the bottom of the triangle in the middle, you got kind of Portsmouth and Southampton, like at the bottom of that triangle, and off the coast, you have the Isle of Wight, which is a small little, again, it's kind of a diamond-shaped island. I think it's like 30 miles across by 28 miles high, and it's a real, idyllic place to grow up. I'm not going to lie. It was a very kind of safe, active, childhood. I grew up a lot of time, we would go to the beach, we would go to playgrounds, we would be outside a lot. And, me and my brother, we played a lot of soccer growing up, played a lot of sports, played a lot of soccer, played a lot of, basketball, a lot of kind of cross-country running, athletics, like all the kind of classic stuff you do when you're growing up. And, it really was a good time. And of course, like with everybody, you don't really necessarily appreciate it when you're there. It just is what it is. And you have no perspective. You have no idea what other people are going through or where other people grow up. So you just kind of you're just going along with it. Of course, now when I look back, I realize how lucky and fortunate I was, and how, obviously what a good choice my parents made to settle there and to raise us in that environment, because it was a great environment to grow up in. And, I think for me, the fitness kind of journey that I'm on really started there. And as we'll get to later on in this kind of podcast series, I think it very much led to what's about to happen. But yeah, so in terms of training, when I was on the island, obviously my teenage years and my developmental years, I was playing just a lot of general sports. And then I remember when I was 15, I started taking a real interest in bodybuilding. a lot of it came from movies.
I was going to say, the movies is what brought you to America.
Yeah, it definitely, I remember I had this bedroom. It was above, in my parents' house, obviously above the living room. And I'd stay out there. I'd watch a lot of like old Schwarzenegger movies and old Van Damme movies and that kind of stuff. All those classic kind of 80s action movies. And I convinced them to let me, to let myself, buy myself a home gymnasium. Mm-hmm. Very basic stuff, basic barbells, dumbbells, one of those kind of multi gyms. They exist today, but they don't. In those days, you could go to a catalog. It was called the Argos catalog, and it's like a home shopping catalog, and you could pick out like a home gym setup.
Now, I remember my dad's brothers had they were black twist-on dumbbells that you twist and locked in, and you had to put them new ones on. Yeah. So I remember they gave those me first, and those are the ones they gave me. I'm like, gosh, this is old tech.
Well, I had the pec deck. I had the
whole pec deck.
Yeah, I had the pec deck with a stack. The stack was like cement inside plastic. I had it had like a bench press, like a fixed bench press. It had a leg extension, leg curl. It was a pretty ridiculous thing to have in your bedroom. To this day, I'm like, God bless my parents for allowing me to do it, because not only was it big, but it was loud.
Well, did you have to order that, or did a department store, the Isle of Wight, have that in there?
No.
Because I'm thinking, if this is the 80s, you had to order this in.
I think I ordered it into the department store and then went and picked it up and then came back and built it in my living room.
Amazing.
Now, my bedroom was directly above the living room. So imagine in those days how, everything wasn't smooth like it is now. So this thing was like, every time you do a rep, it was conk, 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 like loud, like just cement hitting on cement plugs. And obviously they'd be downstairs trying to relax and watch TV, whatever, and just upstairs I'll be there clunk, 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 making this god awful racket, watching my Schwarzenegger movies and getting jacked. But yeah, it was again something I fell in love with very quickly, and I think to this day, what I'd say about myself is I've always been very consistent with exercise and training. And it pretty much started there. I would religiously train. From memory, I think pretty much every day. Maybe took a rest day, maybe took 2 rest days, perhaps. But I was pretty much up there every evening, just working out. Now, why I worked out so much and why it became such a big part of my life, I don't really know. I know, of course, the movies was a bit of a thing.
I was going to say, what about it made you want to, get after it?
I think it was, and this is the kind of a classic thing with a lot of people, I wanted to be different. I wanted to stand out. And I thought that maybe weight training and bodybuilding in some fashion would set me apart from the rest. And I think that was definitely a part of it. As I'll talk about later, I did go for a brief time in my life, go into acting. And I think, I think there's a part of me that was, wanted to stand out, wanted to get away from the small town that I grew up in and wanted to make something of myself. And I think I brought in a lot of things that I thought would do that, I thought would set me apart from the crowd kind of thing. And obviously once you start, the adrenaline of it, the pride of it, the results of it. And I think also the influence of my dad, not that my dad was someone who trained a lot. He was never into weight training or bodybuilder or anything like that, but he was a very physical guy. He's well built. He was always doing stuff around the house. He was a very kind of DIY kind of guy. He would, he built the extension on the house. He was always fixing cars. He was always in the garden. He was always doing physical labor type stuff. Of course, and I observed that growing up. So I think as a child, you're very much I want to be like my dad. I want to be physical like my dad. And although I never got into fixing cars and that side of things,
there's time.
There's still time. I think just observing him being physical, made me want to be more physical. And I find myself now, the older I get, and I'm 43 now, the more I want to be more and more like my dad. when it comes to like having a family and you having a house and improving your home and improving the quality of your home for your family and that kind of stuff, he was always doing that. He was always trying to create a better environment for us. And of course, now I find myself in that situation and I want to keep creating, a better environment. So I want to learn how to do all the stuff that he was able to do, which, one of my goals in the next 5 years is to teach myself a lot more about the kind of stuff that he used to do. That's kind of real world stuff. It's funny, like we do so much training in the gym, and we learn how to get stronger and we learn how to get more powerful, and we learn how to be more fit. But so often we don't really use it for much apart from being in the gym. And the goal really for me in the next few years is to use the gym as a tool to build meaningful things. Meaningful structures, meaningful, like I said, environment for my family to grow up in.
The real world application's tough when you're just coming in here to get stronger.
Yeah.
And to adopt that and then also take those things in the real world back into the gym. So finding that bond is like a special place.
Right. And such simple skills that, we can learn easily, but we never do because we don't take the time. And it really is, it often will get other people to do things because it just seems easier, and we'll pay a lot of money to get other people to do things.
There's an app for that.
There's an app for that. Whereas realistically, like if we just spent a few hours learning a new skill or teaching ourselves, and we've got YouTube University now, so it's a lot easier if we take the time.
It's amazing.
All these kind of things that we can do ourselves, it's available to us if we just take the time. So that's one of my goals in the next few years. So anyway, going back, I had that influence of my father. I had the influence of the movie. I had this kind of idea in my head that I wanted to get out of my small town. I wanted to make something of myself. And I think training, was a way that I thought I could do that. And it became, a really strong influence in my life. And obviously people started to notice, people start to make compliments. And I guess there's an ego involved there, of course. When you're growing up, it's like, people are noticing that I'm like looking this way and training this way, and I look different to what other people looked like at my age. I mean, I was pretty developed for a 16-year-old at the time, and it just went from there really. And
according to your photos, you look like Kevin Bacon.
Yes,
because you used to have a whole flock of hair.
Well, that came. Yeah, I guess that came a little bit later, but yeah, the mullet was definitely big part of my personality. And I often think back as well to like the first gyms that I went to on the island, and they were very classic gyms. And this is going back to the late, the early 90s, I guess. And of course, the island being the island, we were behind the mainland anyway, so we weren't like developed in terms of like we didn't have the latest things. It was very much like we were 10 years behind everyone else. So, gyms on the island in the 90s were basically gyms from the 70s and 80s. So it was like, rusted out old iron plates and those old Nautilus machines, which were great, by the way. Very simple cardio, like if any, that I remember. Just old iron and like old bodybuilder type guys who were just like giving you little tips here and there. But I got great results in those gyms because I'd show up every day. It was just like, it was the kind of no excuses, no luxury kind of place. It was just like simple barbells, plates, dumbbells.
If you're a grinder
cables.
like that too, like, for me, I come to the gym, it's like I see someone working harder than me. It's just like, oh man, let's go. Like, if you like that and you have that in a gym, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, any gym community is going to be perfect for you to push yourself harder.
Yeah. And it was like, you would get advice. Of course, there's no internet in those days. So you would like read magazines and to get tips, or you just rely on kind of word of mouth, or, you could maybe get hold of like some footage somewhere or video. There was like old videotapes circulating of like these people training and that kind of stuff. But, there were like, I remember like, getting old bodybuilding magazines and that kind of stuff and just trying to learn however I could how to get bigger and how to get stronger, and supplements and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's kind of funny when you look back now because you didn't have any, no internet, no Instagram, no one influencing you in that way. It was just like, if you wanted to learn something, you had to go out and find how to learn it.
What was the craziest tip you got from your first days in those gyms back then?
Oh my God.
Again, going back on the idea of like,
I remember one guy telling me, put creatine in your coffee in the morning. which is great advice. You know, it's like, you know, creatine you can have any time. Put in your coffee in the morning before you work out. What else was it? I remember a guy there telling me, and this guy was funny. I forget his name, but he was the owner of this gym on the island, and it was an old school bodybuilding gym, and he was like classic like bodybuilder, like took a bunch of steroids, like it was obvious.
Wore a tank top a lot.
There were a lot of those characters. Like there was a guy there with a huge, like he was an old rock and roll guy, and a huge mullet, fringe, and just wore that old 80s like classic bodybuilding, like luminous shorts and like crop tops and that kind of stuff. Stuff now that would, well, actually now it probably would fit right in, but it was full of those kind of like old school bodybuilding characters, and they would like, you know, they just give you old school advice. You know, it was all like just reps and sets and hard work and, you know, basic but very effective stuff. And stuff that still works now. It's just
a lot
like
of egg
people,
whites if it was back then.
a lot of egg whites. Yeah. It's just now there are so many more luxury items, so many more ways to train that like that people have, you know, obviously monetized and made more popular. But those old gyms, you know, they had the nuts and bolts, the real essentials of training, and you learn the hard way, and you learn great things in those days. It's like just simple hard graft, and yeah, like I said, I actually got gropes. I mean, it was simple stuff like I would leave the gym, you know, 15, 16 years old, you can pretty much eat anything and grow. And I remember just leaving the gym, going home, getting two tins of tuna, putting 2 tins of tuna in 2 pieces of bread, and just fucking getting that thing down to get as much protein.
No mayo in there? It was just tuna and bread?
It was just tuna and bread. Yeah. Those are the days. I should start doing that again.
Well, it's funny overseas. I mean, everywhere I've lived, you know, especially people bodybuilding or just basketball training, just that can of tuna is just, it's just such a thing everywhere else but here, you know, just pocket can of tuna.
Yeah, it was those days. It was tuna and eggs.
I mean, you can't beat the protein you're going to get instantly from just like 2 cans of tuna right there. I mean,
you know, especially when you're on a budget, you know, it was just the way to do it.
For $2, you're going to get 30 to 40 grams of protein from 2 cans. Like,
I remember, going to a supplement store, and it was like, I mean, they still have them these days, but it was like a massive tub of protein powder for mass gain. And essentially, in those days, and a lot of them are now, it was just whey essentially mixed with sugar, because it was for mass gain. So I had, like, you know, they were saying it had, you know, X amount of calories per serving and X amount of carbohydrates, but it was really just, you know, whey and sugar. And I remember bringing it home, and of course the label had like a huge guy, like obviously on a bunch of steroids. And I remember my brother like getting worried about me, thinking like, oh my God, what is he doing? What is he taking? This is, you know, he thought it was some kind of crazy like steroid in this tub, and it was just whey and sugar. But, you know, that was a funny moment. I remember it. I remember like slamming my hands on the tub after he was like having a go at me and being like, what are you doing? And I was like, you don't understand. You don't know. But it really was just whey and sugar. But yeah, I look back on those kind of early training days with fond memories, because it was like a simple time, and it was just a good environment to be in, you know. And then from there, I guess, you know, I trained that way, you know, mixing up the stuff in my bedroom and those old local gyms, you know, pretty much until I went to college, university, which I went to in Swansea, which is in Wales. And, you know, you might think, oh my God, once you go to university, you're going to have like a state-of-the-art gym. Well, I'm sure Swansea now has a state-of-the-art gym, but in those days, I mean, I went to university, 96? And it was just pretty much the same fucking gym that I had on the Isle of Wight. It was old school iron. And you had these big Welsh boys who were like, you know, I think Wales as a country, it's a place of proud men and proud people, proud women as well. But in those days, there weren't a lot. I'll be honest, there weren't a lot like women lifters in the gym in Swansea. So the guys that were in there were like old school iron lifters, and they were like guys doing big squats and big deadlifts and big bench press, just old school Welsh boys. And it was impressive to see, you know. It was just like, again, no fluff, no TVs, no luxuries. It was just iron. And, you know, it was pretty much the same for me at university. I fell right into my routine of training, you know, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, pretty obsessively. Of course, like anybody at college, I was out, I was drinking, I didn't have the best nutrition for sure. There were a lot of kebabs involved. But I still remember being very, very consistent with my training. And you kind of see the pattern of this through my life. It was like the one consistent thing that I always had. Like no matter what else was happening, no matter what else I was experiencing, the gym was always the one constant thing. So I'm in this gym in Swansea, and I'm training pretty, like I said, pretty religiously. And eating. Nutrition was like, of course, I'm just eating as much as I can with the money that I have. So I remember, I ate a lot of processed meats in those days because processed meats was cheap, and I was just
and you could
get
away with it.
Like you get away with it. I was like just buying packs of ham and a ton of rice, and I remember making these huge like meals of just like getting the biggest wok I could find and just throwing fucking every thing I could find.
Same in college. Ground beef, rice-a-roni. Throw it in, maybe get some Tostito chips to dip it.
Right.
Throw a bunch of Frank's hot sauce in.
Yeah.
And that's under $5 and you have a few pounds of food.
So it was a ton of food, a lot of Guinness, and, all the gains I could find. But of course, Wales as a country, like I said, very, very proud, very strong country, and a big rugby culture in Wales. So, I remember in that gym, there were a lot of rugby boys who are like, again, lifting big weights and, that kind of like no pain, no gain kind of attitude, which again was influential. And, I think it went for me from like being on the island, it was more kind of like, more of a like aesthetic bodybuilding type thing. And then I went to Swansea and I saw what these guys are lifting in terms of strength. I was like, fuck, these boys are fucking strong. Like, look how much they're squatting, look how much they're deadlifting. So then it became more of a, fuck, I need to get stronger. It's not just about like looking better. Mm-hmm. It's about being a lot stronger, especially when it comes to things like squats and deadlifts. Like I'd always done bench. Like every fucking kid does bench because everyone wants a bigger chest. But I remember at Swansea that being the first kind of like, oh fuck, I've been missing something here. I need to get fucking stronger legs. So that's when I really started like squatting and deadlifting. I mean, badly squatting. If I was to see a video of myself squatting now, I would shudder.
Bent over.
It would be horrible.
Not breaking 90 degrees.
Exactly. Just those kind of like, yeah, terrible. But yeah, I mean that, I didn't really learn how to squat properly until after college, but we'll get to that. So anyway, for 3 years I was in Swansea, training pretty consistently. And then in 99, I went to the States. I went to Utah. I did my degree, by the way, was in American Studies. I was always kind of fascinated with America. A lot of my influences growing up were American. A lot of movie stuff, a lot of music stuff. I was a huge Springsteen fan, which was a huge part of my decision, which sounds crazy to some people, but it was a huge factor in my decision-making process. My dissertation was on Bruce Springsteen. So yeah, it was a huge influence for me. So my studies were in American literature, American film, American ideology, Native American history, all that kind of stuff, which was fascinating. I loved my degree. Mm-hmm. And it led me to Utah in 99. And this was kind of a pivotal moment for me because it was the first kind of time I'd seen the American landscape.
Utah is beautiful. It's a good place, first place to go.
Now, I remember distinctly when I was, I think, 10 years old, my parents taking me to Canada. We had relatives in Canada. We went to Canada and I had like these amazing childhood memories of Canada and how it's like this big open space and this real kind of outdoorsy environment. And I remember one of my great uncles had a pike farm and we go on the boat and we fish for pike. And it was just a beautiful way to spend time. And I kind of fell in love with it. And I think part of me was always trying to get back to that environment, even though, you know, I was there for maybe 2 weeks. It left a real imprint on me. So when I finally got back to Utah, I think it was that rekindling of that thing of like, oh my God, this is what I love. Like these big open spaces, the mountains, and the expanse of land, and that feeling of that feeling of freedom. And I know that sounds cheesy to say, but it really for me it was that. It was like, oh my God, I feel open here. I feel kind of like I could go places, I could do things. And yeah, Utah was a special place and still is a special place for me. I was in Salt Lake City. You know, we were only there for a year. Obviously, you know, you're still at uni, and with everything that uni comes, so still drinking a lot, still eating pretty badly. I remember getting to Salt Lake and discovering Subway. And of course, we didn't have Subway in the UK. And think to myself, God, this is the best thing on the planet. Like fucking foot-long meatball subs, like all that protein. Oh my God. Because not knowing anything about like what really goes into a Subway. But yeah, I was pretty much on the Subway diet for a year. Subway and pizza. And I remember, you know, I'd always been very consistent with my training. And then I remember being in Salt Lake, training for a while, and then we started snowboarding because obviously we wanted to take advantage of the mountains.
Got to, yeah.
So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna snowboard for a while. I'm not gonna worry about training. I'm just gonna like enjoy my life and do that. And that lasted for about 6 weeks. And to this day, that 6 weeks is the only time I've been out of the gym to this day. And I remember loving snowboarding, and I still love snowboarding. Not that I've been for a while, but I still love it. But I remember kind of looking at myself in the mirror after that 6 weeks and being like, this is not, this, you can't be like this. This is not for you. This is not the way that you are. And then getting back in the gym and hitting it pretty hard. Because it was one of those things, like the gym and the way that I looked and the way that I felt had been something that defined a part of me. And as soon as I started to lose that, I felt like I was losing part of myself, and I didn't really know who I was anymore, and it would take me down a dangerous path. So I had to get myself kind of like back in the gym to just like get myself back, get my routine back, get like the things that made sense to me and made me feel how I wanted to feel. Like a lot of that I think was centered around the gym. And when I lost that for that period of time, I think I kind of lost my way a little bit. And of course I was like in college and wanted to be experimental and like trying different things. But, you know, I think it was a good lesson. Like you need this thing in your life because this is the thing that centers you and keeps you stable. And I do remember feeling like somewhat unstable without it. So it kind of like gave me back that stability. And then, of course, the quality of the gym in Salt Lake was a lot better than it was in Swansea. So I remember enjoying that training, like finding new machines and new ways to train.
Well, you said you were going out, but don't they have like lower alcohol percentages in their beer?
Well, it just means you drink more.
More?
No, it was. And I remember having to go across state lines to get bourbon and then bringing it back in.
Did you go to Colorado or Wyoming for that? Or Idaho?
I can't remember. I can't remember.
Sounds like it. I can't remember.
I remember my parents coming out, and my parents have always been like, with alcohol, they've always been very like in moderation. You know, they were always pretty grown up about it. So they took me somewhere, and I remember we picked up some bourbon, some other things, and we had it at the house, and yeah. It wasn't an issue. It was not an issue that oh my God, I can't get drunk anymore because this beer's too weak. We still got away with it. But the training, you know, like I said, took a backseat for a while, but it came back, and then once it was back, it was kind of back for good. And that whole experience of Salt Lake City and Utah, and the training and the snowboarding and the being outdoors and the landscape and the mountains, it stayed with me. And it became a very kind of like influential and important part of my state and what I knew I wanted to like get to eventually. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I didn't, you know, at that point I didn't know I wanted to be a trainer. I certainly didn't know I wanted to open a gym. That wasn't even on my in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
no ambition there at all. I had no real clue of what I wanted to do. But all I know is that experience stayed with me, and it was an important part of everything that was to come in the future. And then the end of that year, the end of 99, I went back to Swansea, had another year in Swansea, graduated in 2000. And then this is the start of kind of like my London life. Now London, I moved to pretty much straight after college. I had been, during my final year of university, going to auditions for acting. Back in those days, Brandon, I was semi-good looking. I was not like I am now. This tired being you see before you. And I think, I was in good shape. I was somewhat good looking. There were auditions I was going to that were not because you were a great actor, but because you looked a certain way and that kind of stuff. And I landed a role in a British series called Hollyoaks, which is, kind of like a laughing matter for many of my friends at the time, because it was like a teen soap opera. But it was very, very popular. People, like kids of my generation, everybody watched it. It was a huge deal. And I landed this role, and I landed it out of like thousands of people. They did open auditions. And, it was a big thing. It was like, I landed this role out of thousands of people, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be a fucking actor. This is going to be like the start of like my acting career. And, I went, I did the role. It didn't last for long. Like I think front to back, maybe it lasted for like 3 months of filming. I was of course terrible. I was a terrible actor.
No, unless you're acting right now, that was good.
Terrible actor. And it was short lived, but it did ignite something in me that was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to do with my life. This is what I want to wake up every morning, and I want to act. I want to stand out from the crowd. I want to be somebody. I want to, at that point, it was nothing to do with the craft of acting. I don't think it was just like, this was a way to be somebody, I think. But after that, like, I got an agent, and I was still a terrible actor. And, I started to study. I went back to college to study drama and acting, and got a little bit better. And then, went to some auditions, got some more roles. Nothing major. I did a movie. I did some theater, commercials, that kind of stuff. But it never felt stable. Of course, like many young actors, it's a very unstable lifestyle.
Oh yeah.
I was still pretty much like, this is my dream. This is what I want to do. And this is what, this is the meaningful thing I want to do with my life. This is the great purpose of my life. After, I guess, 5 years of doing that, and working kind of like, the typical jobs that all actors do when they're, out of work, like working in bars and working in hotels and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I have to do something else. Like, there has to be something else that I can fall back on if this doesn't pan out for me. And I remember, of course, my parents being worried and everyone being worried about me. Like, this might not work. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I'm 26 years old at that point, and I'm like, maybe I do need to have a backup plan here. I was miserable. You can do those jobs for a while and it'd be fun, and then after a while, like, you get up every morning and you do something that is just meaningless to your life. And
I tried to make it a big city in New York myself.
Yeah.
Same way like that. It's like, you can't do. It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It's like I mentally can't do this anymore. Like, it's easy, but my brain is dead.
You're tough. You're trying to hold it together for everybody and yourself, and it's just like, no. Yeah. I don't want this. I'm not happy.
Yeah. And I remember, so I'm working in this hotel called the Smartens Lane Hotel. Oh. And I get to the point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm just, I remember like being really forgetful, and being like, oh my God, I think I've got something wrong with me. I think I've got like early onset of Parkinson's or something. And it
26.
was, yeah. And it was all just, it was depression, and it was, it was just the feeling of like my brain not being challenged, and I was just very, stressed, not in a oh my god I'm so busy kind of way, but stressed and like overwhelmed with like unfulfilled expectation and unfulfilled promise, and like, oh my god, I'm a failure, like this is a disaster, what have I done with my life kind of thing. And I remember my girlfriend at the time saying to me, listen, like, why don't you become like a personal trainer? Because at this point I'm still doing fitness all the time, like I'm still into the bodybuilding thing, and I started boxing, and I was fit, I was strong, I was a decent boxer, but I remember her initially saying it to me, and me just having imposter syndrome. Like, what do I know about personal training? Like, personal trainers are professional people. They're amazingly fit, or they're the best at what they do, kind of stuff. And it just being like that, the classic imposter syndrome of like I can't do that. That's for these people. That's not for me. But then after a while, like I kept thinking about it, and I started looking into courses and stuff. And I was like, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is something I could potentially do. And so I did. Like eventually I did. I went to, in those days you did a diploma in personal training. These days you can go and get a weekend fucking certification. Yeah. But those days, like it was a 6-month diploma. And I remember, so I was working full time, and I would go to the college. I think it was four days a week, including weekends. And I studied to become a personal trainer, so anatomy, physiology, practical, all that kind of stuff. And it took 6 months.
Way more than a certification you get online.
Yeah. And it was, I was still working at the hotel full time, so it was the hotel work was funding that. And yeah, the certification was great. It was really interesting. I kind of, fell in love with it pretty quickly. And I was fortunate enough to be offered a job, funnily enough, in a gym that was being built underneath the hotel. In a gym that was called Gym Box. And this was a great place to work. It was a great place to start. It was a brand new gym. Gym Box was kind of at the forefront of modern gyms in terms of they had a lot to offer. It wasn't just bodybuilding. It wasn't just boxing. It wasn't just spin or anything like that. It really had everything. It was the first kind of like multidisciplinary gym that incorporated what we called white collar boxing into a regular kind of gym environment. And it was also the birth of, this was really, I guess it was right at the birth of CrossFit. So it kind of had that hybrid, environment of like, you could box, you could bodybuild, and you could do those CrossFit type workouts. And so it was a great environment for me to be in, because I'd always really been that hybrid guy of, I wanted muscle, but I also wanted to be fit, and I also wanted to be able to do things. I wanted to be able to run. And then the boxing thing had really like done something important for me. So I wanted to incorporate all the things in my training and all the things I wanted to teach. And so that was a really good environment for me to start in. And I would also, at the same time as this, someone had offered me their business, basically offered me to take over their business of home visits. So I would go to people's homes and train them. So I was mixing up, personal training at the gym with doing these home visits. And this is, what year would this be now?
We're in the 2000s.
We're in the 2000s, yeah, early 2000s, maybe 2006. Something like this. Anyway, so I'm mixing up those things. I'm working long days, working super hard, doing a lot of personal training sessions, but making good money from where I'd been before. To the situation now. It's like, shit, suddenly I'm like making decent money for the first time in my life, really doing something I love. And very quickly the kind of acting stuff kind of went away. And then I became a trainer. I became a personal trainer. That was my thing. And that was how I started to see myself. And I think from that point on, it was kind of clear to me that this was what I was going to do with my life in some fashion. I got my diploma in personal training already. And then I guess the next phase really of my development was three things. It was Jim Jones, my first interactions with Jim Jones. It was Charles Poliquin and my first courses with PICP. And it was the birth of CrossFit. And those three things that entered really at that time into the physical space and the gym environment, those three things would kind of change the course of what I was going to do in the future. Okay, guys, that's the end of episode 1. We'll be back with you shortly to do episode 2. I hope this is somewhat interesting for you guys. And yeah, it's just interesting for me to look back at all this stuff and think about how all these things contributed to where I am now. And I want everybody to always remember, like, where you are in your life right now is not necessarily where you're going to end up, but it may well be part of the cocktail that ends to your, that leads to your kind of destiny. I think sometimes it's easy to get stuck. It's easy to think, is this it for me? It's easy to get like down or negative about the situation you're in. But remember, like, everything has value. Everything is a learning experience. You will take wherever you are now, whatever you are doing, and you will use it again in the future. And maybe it will contribute meaningfully towards something great in your life. So always keep your head up. So that's the end of this episode, Origins, Dreams, and How the Fuck I Got Here. And we'll be back with you shortly for episode 2. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Remember, we are now fully open at 1316 Glendale Blvd, Pharos Athletic Club. And we have some more great news for you coming up soon. So until next time, take care.
Maskless without a vaccine, with the vaccine.
Yeah, maskless with a vaccine. Everyone's here. Everyone's having a great time, and it's great to be back live with everybody. I will catch you real soon, guys. Take care.